It's Thursday at Tia Talks, October 1. Can y'all believe that it is already October? Whew,
Right.
this has been the longest year of my entire life, okay?
Yes.
Um,
Yeah.
I know many
Most
people
definitely.
people joke about it, but I really feel like I've been 29 for 29 years.
Right.
Okay. Happy Thursday again. Thank everyone for tuning in to Tia Talks. We have a very special guest today, and I'll let her introduce herself in a second. But before we get started, like always, thank you again for your support. Share, share, share. We'll be in the comments. If you have any questions once we start this conversation, think of any questions that you have for our special guest, you are more than welcome to put them in the comments and we will try to get to them. If not during this conversation, we will definitely answer the questions later after the conversation is over. So don't forget to like, don't forget to share, let your people know that we have some great conversation gems going on tonight. Okay? So, first question. Introduce yourself and let the audience know who you are, where you're from, and what do you
Cool.
do.
Cool. Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here. I'm super excited. It's
Yes,
awesome.
thank you.
My name is L'Oreal. For those who may or may not know me, my name is L'Oreal. Yes, just like the makeup. I'm an author and a creative artist, and born and raised Chattanooga, Tennessee, but moved to Clarksville in 2008 to go to Austin Peay. So graduated from there, and just been living it up since then, and just creating and everywhere I go. So
Yes. Um, we were at Austin P at the same time. I was a little bit
yes.
under the radar, nobody really knew me. But
I tried to stay under there, but
um,
who knows?
But yeah, Austin P was a great. I think while we were there, I think that's when they hit the 10,000 student thing, and they had the big
Yes.
thing. So
Yeah.
I definitely love Austin P. Always have,
Hmm.
always will. I a lot of things that you learn it happens at
Hmm.
Austin P. And I think
Yeah.
your I don't really like saying better half because we're whole people, but you
Right.
also met you
Yeah.
met your husband at Austin P, which I
Right.
have the
Yeah.
pleasure of knowing as well. So Austin, college days, it was hard, but
Right. But
it
we
made us
here
who we are.
now.
We are
Right. We
here.
here.
We are here in the land of the living. So I think I mentioned it mentioned it last week. For those who watched last week, that I was going to be interviewing the author of this lovely book, and I told you all where to find it.
Hmm.
We will be posting that link in our comments. Um, ooh, yeah, yeah, yeah. We'll be posting that in our comments. Hold on one second. Okay, so sorry, I lost my train of thought, guys. So basically, I know L'Oreal from Austin P. And I read this book. I ordered off Amazon about a week ago, about a week and a half. And you see all, like, look at all that. Like,
Yes. I love the tabs.
these are, these are
Yours is starting
tabs
to look like
that
my copy.
I, right. And so I, there were so many, like, not just quotes, but I told you this on Tuesday, kind of just the way that you used your artistry background to kind of
Hmm.
allow the book to flow in a certain form.
Hmm.
Um, so I guess, of course, let's just dive into the first question of what
Yeah.
motivated you to write this book called God the
Yeah.
Graphic Designer.
After I graduated college, I hopped around job tops several different times. And one of the common themes was just people just being so stuck and complacent. And I realized that at one point in my life, I was there too. And that's my daughter popping up. And I just felt the need to speak to the people who were struggling and willing to live out somebody else's dream instead of pursuing their own, and people who were just complacent in not doing anything. They were content with just being mediocre, and I knew that God had called not just me but everybody to a higher standard, and it just didn't seem like people were doing themselves justice to be in such a mediocre position when they had so much power and authority. And there were so many people that had so many talents, gifts, people who had minds to be business owners and entrepreneurs, but were literally just stuck there and content with just working a regular 9 to 5, miserable while they're there, but content being stuck. And it was probably later on that I realized that it was supposed to be me using my experiences in all those jobs. And it wasn't just me job hopping, it was God kind of positioning me to be able to see and meet numerous different people and see all their circumstances and be able to speak to it. So it was just other people, and wanting to really encourage them to not just live, but actually live on purpose.
Right. I which I'm sure somebody has said this already, but like a couple of
Hmm.
years ago, I was like, live your purpose on purpose.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like the opportunity to, you know, combine searching for who you are, what you're
Hmm.
called to do, with you actually putting it to action. And, so
Yes.
it's like knowing, finding what your purpose is, which takes, it's a journey in itself, but
Hmm.
also being intentional and knowing that you have to go after it and it's not nothing's
Yeah.
just going to like fall in your lap, and
Absolutely.
understanding that everything is designed, and
Hmm.
you mentioned that in your book as well, that it's designed for divine purpose. So
Absolutely.
I think that after some of the questions that we're able to answer is going to intrigue people to go order the book. And
Yeah.
I mean, we're hitting some good questions, but of course it's better if you get this book and read it for yourself so that you
Yeah.
can understand
Absolutely.
exactly where the meat of these questions are coming from throughout this book.
Hmm.
So um, let's let's see, page 3 was one of my questions. You talked about one of your professors. You talked with
Hmm.
school, right? So we have
Yeah.
different professors that kind of spark our interest more than others, and
Yeah.
some of them are they can see a gift, see certain gifts in certain people. And so you
Hmm.
speak about one of your professors who allowed you to kind of grow within yourself and flourish in
Yeah.
what you love to do. Can you
Hmm.
kind of speak on how that paved the way for kind of your journey and how you look back on things and appreciate those moments?
Yeah, absolutely. It was actually one of my high school professors. Well, I hadn't even gotten to college yet, and it was my English professor. I cannot, Mr. Pettit. Mr. Pettit was his name. So anybody who knew me in high school, you know who that guy is. Such an amazing man, and he basically gave us English in a different perspective. Most of the time when you're in English class, it's just test papers, read this here or there, grammar and all that, but he actually took English to a whole nother level for me. And he showed me the power of words, not just, in a text, but he used poetry. Poetry was one of those things, and it made me fall in love with writing, and seeing the depth and the weight that they can carry. But for me, he recognized that not only was I just a regular student, I was actually an artist as well. And for me, one of the ways that I was able to comprehend a lot of stuff growing up was actually writing and drawing, and it was a combination of both of them. But when I was in school, a lot of the professors were like, you can't draw on your paper. You have to, write everything out. And he was the first professor to actually allow me to integrate my art with my writing. And it kind of gave me a different perspective, and it allowed me to kind of unlock a different way of creating, and a different way of expressing myself. And he really pushed us to use the examples that we had in literature to see ourselves in a different way. And he was probably the first professor that allowed me or pushed me to look at my life and really ask the questions: why are you here? What are you meant to do? What do you want to do in life? And I think that just kind of sparked a seed in me at a young age. And he was a very heavy influence for me.
I have a lot of teacher friends or
Yeah.
friends that are in education, and so I think that it's vital or important to mention that a lot of students, when you get older, you always reflect back on that one teacher that either
Hmm.
one that pushed you to be great, or two, the one that just you didn't really care for.
Right.
So it's
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
like just understanding and knowing that like education, the value that our teachers or professors that they have on our lives, like it's so
Hmm.
important, and it's things that we never forget even as adults. And so I
Yeah.
think it's very motivating to know that your high school English professor played a huge role into
Hmm.
being able,
Yeah,
just being able to see that manifest into a whole thing of where your testimony is now in a book,
yeah.
I think speaks volumes. So,
Thank
um,
you.
so we talked about your high school, and I also wanted to hit on your someone in the book that you call James,
Yeah.
um, and one of the jobs that you had, and James was what you called a spiritual role model. Kind of
Yes.
let us know, kind of like the role that James played, as well as how vital having a spiritual role
Hmm.
model is.
Yeah. I met James at a to me, I believe a key point in my life where things kind of transition, not only for me between relocating, but I just graduated college and I was working at this particular job, and he was one of the people that was over me in management. And it was a lot of just, regular, boring stuff that you would normally do throughout the day. But for whatever reason, this man kind of stood out. And I didn't take to him at first, because I just thought it was like a regular boss. And, you go into these jobs not meaning to make friends or connect on that kind of level. But you could really just see the heart that he had. You could really just see God kind of seeping through this man. And it kind of drew you to him. And so when I finally was able to connect, it was during a session where we had to do like a coaching on my performance and kind of where you're at with your job. And we didn't talk about the job at all. We actually had a devotion. We, just talked about the things that I wanted to do in my life. And it was from there I realized that he put me there just so I could meet him. Because had I not met him, I don't know. I feel like maybe I would have had a delayed response to what God was trying to push me into. And I think he was one of the key people early on that allowed me to really stay focused. And he taught me, a beautiful lesson in understanding that even when you're in rough spaces, that it's important for you to keep pushing. One of the things he used to say was, if you can't have the day that you want, buy it, put it on credit, search for that, really push yourself to, no matter what you're going through, to still keep going and moving forward. And that was really, really, that was a really good point for me to know at that time, because after you graduate, college, they tell you after you graduate, hey, things are going to be great. You're going to find a job. You're going to love what you do. You're going to be making all this money. And that is not what happened after. And so I really needed encouragement at that time. And he was one of those people that allowed me to see the importance of having spiritual role models, that when you're in your weakest moments and you're not able to encourage yourself, to be able to surround yourself with people who are like-minded and who are Christ-like, that can pour back into you when you feel empty.
Wow! Shout out to James.
Right. Yeah.
Because, and I kind of, the way that we're going, I hope kind of people follow kind of the path that we're going, because
Yeah.
we have adolescence plays a huge role, and then you
Hmm.
have you've graduated college, and two pivotal people that you can look at, which there's other, I'm sure there's been numerous of
Yeah.
other people that played a
Yeah.
role, but when there's always something that's a shift that
Hmm.
causes things to kind of let you really think and seep into what um, your bigger purpose is, or what God's trying to do, but you can't tell.
Yeah.
Like it's like a fog.
Yeah.
But I think, having those two people, I'm kind of setting it up to kind of go into your testimony and,
Hmm.
you know, diving more into it. Um, so there's a quote. I can't say this guy's name, but I'm gonna try. It's on page 16. How do
It's
you
a
say
hard
it?
one. I'm still struggling with it, but I just say Swami. I hope that's the
Swami.
right
Yep.
way. If not, then charge it to my head and my heart. But yeah, it's one of my favorite
Alicia.
quotes.
Yes, so it's on page 16, and I'm just going to read it so y'all know why I like it so much. It kind of starts off as, I always knew God had a plan for my life. I always sought after what I knew God was calling me to. I did, as the quote by Swami, in this very long name that we can't say, take up one idea, make that idea your life. Think of it, dream of it, live on that idea. Let the brain muscles, like the brain, muscles, nerves, every part of your body be full of that idea. And just leave every other idea alone. That is the way to success.
Yeah.
Break down what that means to you and how that has kind of paved a way into you zoning into your purpose?
Yeah, that quote really, it kind of was like a light for me because I'm that person where I'm like squirrel. I see some over here, wow, this looks great. And then, art is a huge branch. Like you could do anything, in the field that I graduated with. So I was trying to dabble in so many different things. And when I heard that quote, I was just like, wow, I'm missing it. The goal isn't to be the jack of all these different trades. For me, other people it might be different, but for me, I knew that God was telling me, hey, you need to focus on the thing that I called you to. And it could be very difficult just to focus on that one thing because you have so many distractions. But I love the quote because it allows you to see how important it is for you to use every part of your body to stay focused, because you're going to have things that'll pop up, relationships that you deal with, uh, finances, jobs, all these different variables that you can't account for. But it's about really putting everything that you have into that idea. And no matter what comes against you, no matter what pops up, you're going to be able to have tunnel vision. And everything about you needs to be about it. If you have a regular 9 to 5, that's okay. You still need to be able to do something towards that one thing. Even if that means, on your 15-minute break or your lunch, that you do something, you know, take notes, go look up something, go study, whatever. Everything about your life needs to focus in on that thing that God's called you to, because that's how you get closer. And it may not seem like it in the beginning, those little small baby steps, but eventually those steps add up, and that's where you get progress. And because if you're never making any progress towards your purpose, you're never going to get there. And
Right,
so
right,
that's
right.
that's
So
my big takeaway from it.
yes, when I read it, I was like, it's really hard to, like you said, because some people say, "Oh, I have ADHD." Yeah, yeah, yeah. They joke about
Yeah.
it. People really do have it, so it really shouldn't be
Right.
scary.
Yeah.
But I say that sometimes, so I should probably stop. But for me, it's always been where I'm like, "Oh, okay. Well, God blessed me with all these talents, so I should
Mhm.
do everything." You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Yep.
And it's like, but if you're not focused and zoned in, it's are you really fulfilling the way he saw fit? Like, did you even have
Exactly.
a conversation? Like, which talent did he want you to use?
Yeah.
Did he tell you to do all 75 things? So
Right.
it's just one of those things where, quotes like that is like a
Hmm.
reminder, like,
Yes.
you know,
Absolutely.
keep it calm, keep it
And keep you
cute,
grounded.
and
Yeah.
keep it, yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay. So let me see. Hold on. There was two. Okay, so we briefly brought up how you have artistry background, and
Hmm.
so also in here you say art is a reflection of God's creative mind, visually expressed in a form we understand. How have you been able to kind of utilize your educational background and
Hmm.
incorporate it with your purpose that God has given you? Like, how if a person's like, well, I
Yeah.
have these things, but I think
Hmm.
this is my purpose. What would you say to that person, um, that is kind of struggling with kind of
Sure.
combining those things?
Yeah. That's a good question. And I can only speak for me personally, but I really believe that it's not about, don't focus so much on your gift. That's going to come no matter what, because that's what he gave you. I think focusing more so on the spiritual side of it, the spiritual gift aspect. And I'll use me for an example. So I struggled with, I did freelance graphic design for a while, and I took a break, just so that I could recalibrate and refocus. And for me, I kept saying, okay, Lord, I'm doing all these designs, but I'm still not where you want me to be. And he's like, you need to reverse it. You're focusing on, the physical gifts that I gave you, but you need to focus more on the spiritual gifts. And I think it was that moment when I shifted to where I allowed my physical gifts to aid in my spiritual gifts. That's when things changed. That's when things changed. I
Okay.
was able to take my artistic background and what I studied in school and just me learning and gaining knowledge personally on my own to helping me write this book. I took everything that I learned in graphic design and created the book, but I also use my spiritual gift in as far as motivating, encouraging people and adding that extra on top. So it's not about the gift, it's how you use it that matters the most. And are you using it in the way that God intended to? not just for yourself, like really asking him every step of the way, hey, is this how you want me to use this, or how do you want me to switch it up? And because every season is going to be different. You're not gonna you may have multiple gifts to where
Okay.
right now you're doing this, but the next season you might be doing something different, and each time you're building on to where eventually you'll be able to be walking in what he called you to. So I think don't focus so much on the gift, because that's not going anywhere. you know you've built up that muscle. It's like playing basketball. You built up that muscle all your life. Focus on the more important side of it. And I think when you focus on what God wants for you, everything else will fall into place.
That was good. So let me reintroduce that I'm speaking to the Miss L'Oreal Henderson, and of course I'm Tia with Tia Talks. But what you
Thank you.
just said made me think of something, kind of like how we go out of order,
Yeah.
right? So, as a single, I don't have, the order for me is a little different, right? So my parents are still technically
Hmm.
my covering, um,
Right.
until I do find that person. So
Hmm.
I say this to my parents a lot, that I appreciate them being my covering, because I know where their help comes from, right? So
Right.
it's an
Yeah.
order. So whatever that not that I'm asking for permission, but I'm asking that I'm following an order. So I'm seeking
Hmm.
God through my covering as well, for myself as well. So it's
Yeah.
kind of like trying to learn a bike and skip the whole training
Yes.
wheel process, where
Yeah.
you're trying
You
to
have to
just
have a
go with your
foundation.
own in your own might, not
Hmm.
going through the person who gives you the mic.
Right.
And so you're
Yeah.
running around in circles like a merry-go-round, because we didn't, you didn't take the time to kind of
Yeah.
follow that order. Um, and of course, if you're married, there's a different order. Yeah, what I'm trying to say
Yeah.
here, people.
Yeah.
But, just knowing where your help comes from. So you can't
Yes.
jump on the idea, then ask God to bless for something that you didn't even,
He didn't tell you to be
you wasn't
there.
even talking to
Yeah.
him about it. You didn't even say,
Yeah.
hey, you think this is good?
Right.
I've done that a few times. That's why I know how to
Oh, I have too. I have too.
but it's important that, like you said, just kind of zoning in and um, following your spiritual gifts, and then you're following the line. That was really good. It made me think,
Yeah.
yeah, wow. Okay, sorry, I had a little aha moment. Okay, so
Oh, it's okay.
let's see. Let's see. One more question, and then we'll do a door prize. Is that okay?
Okay. Yeah, sure.
Okay, perfect. Oh, and for those that are watching, if you want to be a part of this door prize options, put your name in the comments, tag someone. Let us know that you're here so we can put you in our box and we can do a drawing after this next question. So I'm giving you time to do that. Do it now. Okay, so next question. Hold on. Ooh, I think I'm gonna go to my favorite one. It's on page 38.
Okay, I'm ready.
Mm, okay. Yes. So it says faith can possibly harm you mentally and emotionally if it isn't welded correctly. Faith can also usher in your greatest healing. But if you don't take time to trust God's way and plans, you end up resenting Him along with the painful things that happen to you. Once I submitted to God's direction, my wounds had purpose. Not every storm you go through is an attack from the enemy. Sometimes God will allow the storm in order to shift your complacency.
Hmm.
Okay. Let's just pause and let's just receive what I just read,
Yeah.
because how many times do we hear people say the enemy is out to get me,
Yeah.
the enemy the enemy is out to get me,
Hmm.
and sometimes it's
Yeah.
you,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
it's you,
And you don't even
you your
realize it.
enemy.
Yeah.
But to say my wounds have purpose, to just that was when that's why I was gonna finish, because I would read it and I'd be like, okay, and I would sit the book down and I would reflect on it. So that's another thing that I love
Yeah.
so much about it so far, is like it's things that people go through on a daily basis, but how you put it on
Mhm.
paper and how you've written it, it's just been like, okay. I know, but did I really
Thank
know? And
you.
am I utilizing it? So, okay,
Yeah.
back to my question. So, when you say
Yeah.
my wounds had purpose, where, if you can remember, where were you in your thought process when you wrote this to say my wounds had purpose?
Yeah.
What wounds, whatever wounds you don't mind letting us know, but where
Hmm.
were you at in that moment?
I can definitely say during that time, I know I was going through a season of depression. Because I just kept feeling like I was going in the same cycle. I'm like, Lord, you told me I was supposed to be doing this, and I'm not. I feel stuck. I'm going to all these different jobs, and I don't fit, or I'm getting fired left and right. And it was frustrating, and I kept, saying, okay, do something. Trying to test him, but I realized one of my biggest problems was that I wasn't really trusting him. And trust is one of those things where it has to be earned. It's not just in our relationships, with friendships or, romantically, but it's also with God, and I realized that one of my main issues, it wasn't the enemy throwing all these attacks. It was because I didn't have a relationship with God. So if I don't have a relationship with him, there's no way I can build trust because I don't know him. He
Right,
knows me, but I didn't know him. And I think that was one of the biggest things. And I realized that not only was I going through that, but a lot of the stuff that I was going through, it was conditioning me to be able to speak to the person that I was meant to motivate and encourage. It was a part of my calling. A lot of the issues and the things that I was struggling with, they were a part of my calling. And it was meant to be more so as a blessing and a gift, not just for me, but for other people. And so that very thing that I could be struggling with, literally, that day, the day before, the next day, somebody would come to me and say, I'm struggling with this. I just don't know what to do. And now I can speak to that person because I've been through it and I understand. And so I believe a lot of the times that the things that we're struggling with the most are usually the things that we're going to need to be able to bless somebody else. Because if you've never been through it, how can you speak to it? And I'm
right,
not about, Christianity, people, have this sugar coated, view of it. And I really believe that it's not just about telling somebody about God. It's about really connecting with them and being honest. I think a lot of Christians aren't really honest with what they're going through. They're very surface level. And not saying you have to
right,
get all in your business if you don't want to, but being completely honest and saying, hey, no, I struggled with this. Here's how I got through.
right.
And I realized that my wounds became my testimony, and it became my ministry, and how I was able to encourage other people. And some people, it doesn't have to be long and drawn out. It's just something as simple as a conversation. And I really wanted to, for me, I could never find the right person to be able to really give back what I needed. And so a lot of the book, I'm really motivating myself. And it's a conversation that I'm having between me and God. It's not necessarily for everybody else. And that's how a lot of the book came about, was really through my journaling and just conversations that I was having with God and myself. Hey, God, I'm pissed off today. I felt like you weren't there. And him coming back and saying, I was there, but it was for a specific reason. And he might be quiet, but he's there anyway. And when you can't see his hand, you still have to be able to trust his heart, and that comes with creating relationship.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay. My mind, oh, another quote. This is on page 33. My mind gained power over my circumstances and it blossomed a new way of living for me. Can we kind
Hmm.
of talk about how important, earlier we talked about kind of one idea, your brain, the nerves, your muscles,
Yes.
everything has to be in sync. Can we talk
Hmm.
about how vital the mind is in
Yeah.
being in sync and fulfilling your purpose?
Yeah. Gosh, that's so good that you asked that question, because I literally I follow Dr. Jackie Green, Travis Green's wife, and
Hmm.
she literally just it was either today or yesterday. It was kind of confirmation. And she was talking about how the enemy can kind of sneak in and you have to be covered in prayer. But it is so easy for us to give in to the distractions of the enemy. Like, so easy. If you noticed how, you can come in and be having an amazing day, and one of your coworkers can make you mad, and then you instantly, your day is over with. So it's really about protecting your mindset, not only just from different things and circumstances around you, but really trying to hone in on what it is that God's called you to. Creating tunnel vision. Instead of saying, okay, this isn't going to work, speak what may not have happened already. Speak what you still can't see, because that's about having that faith. It's about having faith even in the midst of not being able to see it. That's what it is. But if you're operating in fear, or if you're letting the distractions and things hinder you from what God's called you to, you're never going to get there. And not just that, it's changing a mindset of not being stuck in what you're in. If you've been doing the same thing in this cycle that you've been going on and you don't even realize it, and you haven't made any progress, you haven't made any growth, you're the same person you were last year, you're never going to make any progress. So really shifting your mind, not only just with your faith, but also with where you are, really change the way you view your circumstances. And if you don't see it right now, speak it. Speak what you can't see. And that's how you get it, manifest it, because we have so much power in our words. Like, he gave us the authority, he says it in the Bible, but we have so much power to change our circumstances. Something as simple as just saying, okay, Lord, I'm not having a great day today, but you know what? I'm going to change the situation. I'm going to smile even if I don't feel like it. I'm going to greet that person that I don't like. I'm going to pray for the person that just cussed me out, and you really have to create that habit, because it doesn't come natural. The things that make us uncomfortable don't come natural, but there's no growth or progress from that. And so shifting your mindset is, I say, it's like a movement. It's really going against the grain of what human nature tells us to do. When something scares us, we want to run and hide. It's that pushing ourselves to believe in what we can't see, and that's how you get closer to where God's calling you.
I've kind of been doing it since 2018, 18, 19, yeah. So every year, everybody has a vision board. So I always got to be extra. So I turned it up a notch, and I made a word of the year. So 2018 was grace, 2019 was intentional, and 2020 was freedom. And so the other day I was just kind of thinking, of course 2020 has been a blah for everybody. But even though it's been blah, there's been things that, and I think I said it to you, like 2020 has made things awful, but certain things has made it better. Like being able to order a margarita to go. Like, I wanted to do that. I can't now because of COVID.
Yeah.
But I also thought back to the word freedom was my word for this year. And there were certain things that I was just doing my vision board, just, which you just do things because, vision board, but then the word. And so because that's my word, I didn't realize until Monday that a lot of the things that I wanted freedom from has happened this year.
Wow,
so it's kind of like
awesome.
being able to, like you said, like you have to speak it, you have to believe it has to be in your mind, your spirit, everything. And even though sometimes you go through the day and like I forgot, like I have my vision board in front of my bed, so I see it, but am I reading it? Like I'm not just not intentional with it every day until I look back and reflect it. Like, wow, I have been become free from certain things. So
absolutely.
Okay, let's see. There's another quote that I ended up finding last night. Hold on. Okay, so another thing random that I loved about the book was each chapter, once you all go order it, you'll be able to see like each chapter kind of has like a pre-title, like install, and it has like hold on, where's my favorite one? Blur. In how you set up you basically give the definition, and then you talk about you talk about it throughout the chapter or that segment. What made you what motivated you to set the book up in such way? Like the way that you titled the chapters or the way that you titled like a segment, like how did you come up with the idea or the theme for how you were going to construct the book?
Yeah. So I didn't want to talk about something that was out of the ordinary for me. I wanted it to be very natural. And the only way that I could do that was to speak from experience. And at the time, graphic design was the form of art that I was using for my company and doing freelance. And I realized while I was doing client work that was something that was heavy, that was weighing on my heart. I'm like, wow, if I look at graphic design as like my example, I just got a lot of revelation in it. And I honestly believe it was God just letting me see it from that perspective. But for me, I just chose to write it in a way that I knew I would understand, and for people who aren't artists, you don't have to be an artist to read the book. You don't have to be a graphic designer to read the book. I've laid it out to where you understand the form of art or the tool or whatever it is that I'm talking about and how it, correlates with God's word and what I may have been through in that particular moment. So I really just wanted to speak from the heart. And actually, shout out to Terrence, my husband, because he was one of the ones that told me, hey, you wrote this. I think you should keep going with it. And it just kind of blossomed from there. And I just tried to find artistic terms that would meet whatever I was going through in that particular chapter or that season.
Right. I think some people that aspire to be authors or
Mm-hmm.
want to write their testimony in a book, I think
Yeah.
that they could get so bogged down into kind of like, oh, is it going to be good enough? Will people
Mm-hmm.
understand what I'm saying? Can
Yeah.
you just kind of, you brought it up before, it came from journaling, but like
Yeah.
at what point in your journaling, like while you were journaling, was it because you were just journaling or because you had a goal to write a book?
Yeah.
How did it come about?
Yeah, so I can't say I never wanted to write a book. I wrote, a small children's book when I was younger, but it wasn't anything I wanted to share with anybody. Um, I think for me, I looked at it from a perspective of, okay, I'm not writing this book. I'm writing it for everybody else, but I'm not writing it to worry about the people who it's not going to affect. I'm going to speak. I know that when I produce these words on paper, whoever it hits, that's who it's meant for. So you can't be focused on, you know all the people who won't like it. Focus in on the people that you're writing to, the audience. Who are you speaking to? And for me, I didn't start off thinking, hey, this I want to the purpose of it was I want to write a book. It actually, my journaling started when I was a kid. It was a way for me to express myself. A lot of times when I was younger, I just didn't feel like I have a voice, or I didn't feel like people would understand me because I was different in a good way, but I just had a different perspective on life, and I just never felt comfortable sharing it with anybody. And my god sister Audra, she was awesome when I was younger. She encouraged me to start writing, and so all of my journaling, I've been journaling probably since I was, I don't know, maybe 9 or 10, maybe younger than that. And so every time I would hear something that I liked in any scripture, any reference, anytime somebody said something that I liked, or, if I had a bad day, I wrote down and recorded everything. And it wasn't until I'd say maybe 2018 or so, 17 or 18, I was at a job, and I remember, I won't say the job, but I was at this job for 2 weeks, and it was the most boring job I've ever done in my life. And I won't even say what I'm doing because that might give it away. It was the most boring job I've ever had in my life. But I was working there, and I had been there for 2 weeks, and I'm doing the job. I'm doing it to the best of my ability, you know. And I at that particular job, you couldn't have anything. You couldn't have a phone, nothing. All I had was a pencil and paper. And so I would jot things down, and I'm like, I'm bored. Let me just write down my thoughts. And as I realized I was starting to write down my thoughts, they became to be bullet points of chapters. It was really weird. And it was almost like God was kind of telling me, hey, I need you to talk about these things. And it was almost like I was just kind of going over my life, and looking at my life on paper. And literally the day after that, I wrote down all that stuff, I got fired. 2 weeks on the job, they told me I did great. And they fired me because they said, you're just not a good fit. And I remember walking out of that job, I said, it's about honoring still having the audacity to honor people, even though they can't see your vision. Just because you have something and you're full of something, and God's giving you so much potential, everybody's not going to be able to see it.
Right.
And you can't
Yeah.
hold those people hostage to that thought. You can't be upset with them because they can't see it. They're not supposed either they're not supposed to see it at all, or they're not supposed to see it right now. And I saw the vision that God was putting over my life, and I know they couldn't see it. And I walked out of that job and I told them, I said, thank you for the opportunity. I got what I needed for while I was here, and I walked
Right.
out of there with my head held high, and I had pride. And that's how the book started. after that, shortly after that, I told my husband, I was like, I think I'm supposed to write a book to tell people what I've been going through. And even if you can't relate specifically to some of the things in the book, there's something in there to still motivate and encourage you. And you can use the lesson in the story to add it to your life and apply it to what you're struggling with.
Yes, 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 yes. Because like I said earlier, like there's so many, and then you also ask questions. So it's like
Hmm.
you're you're speaking and you're engaging and you're allowing us
Hmm.
to think while we're reading. Um,
Yeah,
and so not everybody has the same style of writing. So
sure.
if you were to just um, talk to a group of people, say there's a group of authors or inspired authors here,
Yeah,
can you tell them how long the process was for you to kind of like
sure.
construct your book, find a publisher,
Hmm.
um, kind of like who edits it, like
Yeah,
just that process? Can you kind of
sure.
let me know?
Yeah. It took me, I'd say, maybe about a year and a half, 2 years. And through that, I learned so much. And I went into it with no experience. Like, I didn't know, I didn't know much and I didn't have a lot of resources. And so I did my own research. Google is your best friend. Siri was, my cousin, from another mother. And I literally just looked up everything that I didn't know. And after I did after I did my research, I realized that it was something that I could do. So I self-published. I know I've met a lot of authors who they go through specific publication companies, but for me, I realized it was like God was, I didn't want the message that I had to say be watered down by what they needed to sell a book. The purpose wasn't to sell a book. The purpose was to
Right,
get God's message out, to get out what He told me to do, and to encourage people and to hold them accountable in their situation, even if they don't have anybody to do it. And so I went it from that aspect, and I realized, hey, Loria, you would go to a publisher to create art, cover art. You go to you might have a ghostwriter who could write your book. You might need somebody to do X, Y, and Z. And I'm like, okay, all these things that people usually need, I'm like, I could do that myself. And so I made the conscious decision to publish myself. And so everything that you guys, whenever you get the book, everything that you see is done by me, you know. And through prayer and encouragement from friends, I was able to get it done. And the only thing that I outsourced was my editing. I had an amazing editor. She's so awesome. Her name is Cherie Moore.
Sharima.
And she's on Facebook and Instagram, and you can look her up. She's amazing. Not only did she help me edit the book, but she also gave me tips and tools to help me during the process. And honestly, just to have somebody who could say, it happened, okay, take a breath, it's all right. And I remember specifically, I'd say, I don't know how to do that. She's like, you didn't know how to write a book either, but you wrote one. So
Right.
just have people in my corner, from my editor to my friends to my family, who encouraged me. That was the part that kept me going, because there was plenty of times and plenty of roadblocks that popped up, and I'm like, there's no way this book is going to be out, but staying focused and having a positive mindset is really what pushed me through.
Okay. When writing it, so in my head, well, a question I guess I would ask: Did you realize that once you were journaling and writing things down, did it flow for you, or did you have to like piece things together? So something that you journaled a year ago went in the same chapter as something that journaled a month ago. Like how did you compile your journaling into a book?
Yeah. So honestly, my journaling did it for itself. I journaled daily. So it was one of those things where it just kind of automatic. I feel like God just kind of set it up that way. It wasn't a thing where I had to go and, piece too much. There were things where I'm like, okay, let me put this over here, let me do this, or this would work better over here. And you see my co-host here. Say hi. All right. It was one of those things where it just kind of flowed. I didn't have any issues with that. But I'd say to somebody who is writing, find your own style. You know, take what everybody else is doing Somebody over here might, do this process. Somebody might do, you know, graphs, or somebody might write it this way. Look at all the different ways to write, and then look at how you learn. How do you like to read? When you're reading a book, how do you like it to be presented to yourself? And I think that would really give you the direction, because nobody can really tell you how to do it, because it's your own
Right.
book, and everybody writes in different ways and different styles. So I think you just have to look up other ways, look at everybody else, and take bits and pieces from each person and make it your own.
I like it. I like it. So say that you're in the process of writing something. Were you ever nervous that someone would take your, well, I guess because you did it all on your own, so you really didn't have to
Mhm.
worry about that. But is that a worry for some people who use publishers, that someone will like steal their idea or take their material
Yeah,
and use it for their own?
I think it's always in the back of your mind, but I realize that to me, if you're going to steal my words, you might need the encouragement more so than you actually stealing the art.
Right.
Being an artist, there's always that thought in the back of your mind: are people going to steal this? Are people going to take my ideas? But you're never going to get anywhere if you don't move. So you can't be afraid of what people might say or what people might do after it's out there. You just have to be bold enough and be brave enough to do it,
Yeah.
right?
I think that people get so not people, but people could get so wrapped up in like, oh, are people going to be able to relate to it? And like you said, everything's not for everybody, and
Yeah,
what is meant for people to read and for them to put their eyes on and them receive the words that you're trying to put that you're trying
yeah,
to allow them to understand through your work, then those people will get it and those people will appreciate
yeah.
it and pass it along in any way. Um, so a lot of there's some testimonies that are in here. When you were writing or when you were putting it together, what mindset were you in? Did you ever, because some people have testimonies that they don't want to have to go back and relive, but
Hmm.
sometimes to put it properly on paper, you kind of have to be in that place. What
Yes.
do you like? What do you say to those people who kind of want to write, but they're nervous to go back to that mindset of certain lives that they want to put in a book?
I say, for one, I don't take mental health lightly, because I think it's very important. And so if the places that you have to go back to are painful, I say make sure, for me, stay prayed up. But for people who might not be on that level, I say have really good self-help tools when you're in that moment, because it could be something that if they're struggling, they may need to have either people or self help tools there afterwards, to where once you write it, okay, let me go and unwind, let me go and, get a massage, let me see my counselor maybe an extra day this week.
Yeah,
Really try to make sure you take care of yourself, because it's important that you keep yourself healthy, because if you're not healthy and if you're not in a good state of mind, you can't encourage and influence other people with what you're going through. So, and because it is very important to put out what you're saying, um, but also you want to take care of yourself too.
this book is just overall really good. Again, I still have like maybe one more chapter to finish, but
That's awesome.
I definitely love, 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 love this book so far. Um, I again, the artistry and being able to allow it to flow in a certain way. Um, you would have to read it for your own for you to understand what I'm saying. But
Right,
again,
yeah.
thank you again, and I'll see you later.
Thank you. All right.
Bye.